to a fantasy series is a lot. It takes a lot of courage, to be honest, to commit to a series that has multiple books when you've never read it before and you have no idea if you're going to love it or not, and you really, really want to love it. You've heard all the recommendations, you've heard all of the things, you've read all the reviews, and you're ready. But the big question is, can this series keep you interested through multiple books? Now today I want to give you a list of some series that I have personally read where the second book in the series does not give in to the second book slump that we find in so many fantasy series. That can be a dreaded thing where you love the first book and you get to the second book and it just kind of falls flat.
Oh dear, what an awkward situation.
I don't want you to have that experience. So I have pulled aside several books from the fantasy series that I have personally read and finished, or read as many books in the series as are out currently. I can guarantee you that the second book in the series is either better than the first or continues clipping along at the pace that you loved in book one. The first book on this list is Valor by John Gwynne. This is the second book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I binge read this series in 2 months last year because honestly, this series is so incredibly bingeable. It's ridiculous. Massive epic scope fantasy, good versus evil, all of the things. But it's very easy to read. There are a lot of characters in this series, so the chance that you will find one that you love is very high. There are so many characters in the first book of this series, and book two just keeps expanding, but at least a lot of those characters are familiar, and I actually found that I got into more of a rhythm with book two. It definitely keeps the pace going at the same breakneck, fast-paced pace. And so I definitely have Valor on this list because if you liked Malice, you will definitely keep going strong with Valor. The second book on this list is Pawn's Gambit, which is book two of the Mortal Technique series by Rob J. Hayes. This is one of my all-time fantasy series, and what I loved so much about book two is despite the fact that each of the books in this series are a standalone, there are some threads that connect them. There are some familiar faces in book two that we either met or heard about from book one, and I love how it builds on the world and the magic system. It is absolutely not a disappointment after Never Die. If you loved Never Die, this book, love it. Still a motley crew, Asian-inspired wuxia fighting scenes. The fight scenes in this are so good, you guys. So again, Pawn's Gambit is another book on this list that I highly recommend and will definitely carry you through the series. Next up is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. Now this is... There's a lot of opinions about this series, and I'm just going to share mine because that's what I got. Red Rising is actually a book that I hold very near and dear to my heart. I love the first book in this series. That being said, there are a lot of people that struggle with the first book a little bit. They feel like it's maybe a touch too YA, etc., or it's just kind of... I don't know. There's a lot of things that are said by a lot of people about book one. A more common consensus is that book two is a vast improvement over book one. Now, for me personally, I still love book one. I don't necessarily give it the bad rap that a lot of other people do. That being said, this book takes everything I loved about Red Rising and just levels it the heck up. It really expands the world. The characters get deeper. You almost can see Pierce Brown coming into his own as a writer and really starting to dig in. And I absolutely love this. This is a sci-fi fantasy series, if you've never heard of it before. Very revolutionary themed. There's a caste system, and the main protagonist, Darrow, is fighting his way to the top in order to gain more power, in order to fix things, essentially. Golden Sun is an incredible second book in a series, and you definitely will not find any slump here. Next up is Red Seas Under Red Skies. This is the second book in the Gentleman Bastards series by Scott Lynch, and the first book is The Lies of Locke Lamora, which again is another one of my favorite series of all time. Now this is another second book that I actually find kind of contradictory opinions about. Some people really don't enjoy it. Some people really love it. I'm on the latter end of that spectrum, and I absolutely love this book. This book just deepens all of the things that I loved in the relationships in the lives of Locke Lamora. We get a brand new setting with new exciting adventures. There is a pirate ship with a captain who is, oh, she is good. She's an amazing character. I would think that writing a heist story after the first book would be hard to come up with new and exciting heisty things, but somehow Scott Lynch does a fantastic job with it, even from the very beginning. The other thing that I love about it is he really digs into the human psyche of the main characters and the relationship that they have, and it's just wholesome and precious, and it's one of my favorite bromances in all of fantasy. So, once again, I'm going to recommend Red Seas Under Red Skies as a second book in a series that really does not succumb to the slump. Next up, I'm going to recommend Rise of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan, and this is book 2 in the Rhaeria Revelations. Now, this is an omnibus edition. This used to be 6 books, but they've been since condensed into 3 omnibus editions. This book is kind of an interesting one for me to put on this list because the first book in the series, Theft of Swords, I really struggled with a lot of the things in Theft of Swords. I thought it moved kind of slowly. I really loved the characters and really loved the bromance of it, but I really had a hard time getting going on the book. And my friend Patrick Leo had a video where he talked about how good this series got after book 1, and I was like, okay. Fine. I will pick up the second book. We'll see how it goes. This book shocked me at how much I enjoyed it. This is a book that absolutely blows up after the first one. It is so good. If you had a hard time with Theft of Swords, if you kind of taste tested it and you're really not sure how you're going to feel about the series, I can confidently tell you that book 2 and 3 of the Rhaeria Revelation I enjoyed so much. It took all of the things that I did love about book 1 and just gave me more of that. Rise of Empire is a really fun second book in the series. This is another series I find incredibly accessible to read. It gives you that vast epic fantasy feel without being dense. It's very easy to read. It is also very bingeable. This is another series that I binged pretty quickly. So yeah, this one was a pleasant surprise for me, and I'm happy to include it on this list. All right, another one, and this is probably going to shock absolutely nobody, and that is this chonker brick of a thing, Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. Now, if you guys have seen my vlogs for the Stormlight Archives, I have vlogged every book in the series up to this point, other than Edge Dancer, because I didn't. But Words of Radiance was probably the most fun vlog I've made for this series, and it is easily my favorite book in the series. I loved Way of Kings. I absolutely love Words of Radiance so much. This is my favorite book in the Stormlight Archive without hesitation. And I will actually say that I think the first 2 books are the strongest in this particular series. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how Sanderson decides to close everything up in book 5, which is the end of the first half of the Stormlight Archive arc. Apparently there's going to be 10, but there's like a separation between the 2 sets of 5. So I don't know how that's going to go, but I will say that book 2 in this series for sure is one that I think really stepped up the game of book 1, really gave me so much more depth in the characters. It was incredibly twisty-turny, surprising, fun. I burned through this book. So again, if you aren't really sure how you're gonna feel after Way of Kings, or you've been hesitating, this second book in the series is also one that I absolutely loved. And last but absolutely not least, I'm going to hold up Dead House Gates. This is book 2 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and I have so many things to say about this book, you guys. I love this book so much. Okay, so this book, I definitely had a little bit of a hard time reading Gardens of the Moon, as a lot of people do. Malazan hits so differently for so many different people, and it's beautiful, it's incredible, it's vast, it's confusing at times, it has just so much in it. Gardens was a book that really, I enjoyed some of the characters, and it was enough to pull me into book 2. I definitely had a hard time with book 1, I won't lie, I was so confused, and in fairness, I was a brand new fantasy reader and I was 21, so this is the book that told me that Malazan Book of the Fallen was going to be an incredibly influential and important series for me as a reader, as a writer, as a person. Dead House Gates, in my opinion, having read 4 of the Malazan books so far, this one is my favorite, and it is going to take a miracle of God to knock this off of its podium because it's incredible. It has one of the most gripping plot lines and arcs of anything I've ever read in the chain of dogs. If you know, you know. But it also just delves so incredibly deeply into the human experience and trauma and people. This is something that I want to say to anyone who is considering Malazan or has read the first book of Malazan and feels kind of lost and confused. I always tell people, give it at least until Dead House Gates. Even Memories of Ice, which is also an incredible book in the series, but Dead House Gates is really, in my opinion, a huge step up from Gardens of the Moon, and you follow some storylines that will absolutely blow your mind and just, you're going to want tissues for sure. This is a book that I absolutely love. In my opinion, it's the best second book of a series I've ever read because it's my favorite book. So obviously I have that opinion. But highly recommend this book, and if you're afraid of Malazan, don't be. Honestly, just try it and go with the flow and see what characters or story arcs resonate with you. All right, so that is a list of books that I think beat the slump, that second book slump. And I hope that you enjoy any of these that you decide to pick up. If you've already read them, I'd love to know in the comments below. Tell me what series you think have really strong second installments of the series. Let me know which ones are your favorites, because I want to know what you would recommend. So I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you are reading amazing books, and I will see you in the next video.